I'm Dr. Christy Gibson, and this is a part of my book series where I talk about seminal books in the learning about trauma. So today we're going to talk about How to Remove Trauma Response, which is by Alun Parry out of the UK. My friend and fellow trauma therapist and research partner, Dr. Sue Won-Tan, pointed this book out to me as being a really excellent primer on memory reconsolidation. So, let's talk a little bit about what this book is, and then I'll mention one key thing that I think is missing. So I loved Alan's definition of trauma. So a psychological injury that was significant enough to still be touching your life today. So he talks about the beliefs and nervous system responses that ensured your survival. So I like this because it's non-pathologizing, because it's describing this as adaptive and not maladaptive, which is very much my personal paradigm on this. And then what he describes is following Bruce Ecker's protocol in trauma processing. So I'll get into some of the stages that he describes, and he just gives really concrete examples on how to do it, as well as personal experiences that he's had through these different stages. So on page 47, he talks about Bruce Ecker's 7 stages, which are ABC, preparation stages, 1, 2, 3, implementation stages, and then V is verifying that the therapy worked. So this is very manualized, like it's telling you there's this pathway towards each of these stages, and then he talks about what that looks like. So in the ABC phase, the steps are identifying the problem, identifying the target learning, and generating mismatch information. So something that you think is true, but then we're generating a mismatch, which is something that's different or even the opposite. So the problem is whatever the patient or client wants to change. We don't really define the problem. The problem is defined by that person, because they get to decide if it matters to them, if it's affecting their life in, we would call it a functional way, because that's, a very psychiatric and psychological way, but they get to decide what's important and meaningful. So he talks about how would you like to be instead. So this can be nervous system changes, this can be these automatic responses, and these can also be belief systems. So he talks about lots of different ways that you are given experiences that either confirm or don't confirm your previous learning. And so in the preparation phase, he just gives you little sample experiences of things that don't confirm. So he identifies the issue that we're working with, so a specific situation or a specific belief, and then he talks about noticing the nervous system response. So that's a big part of what I would do as a somatic approach. So looking for core beliefs, and that all of their beliefs and behaviors are protective. So we reframe it as not being a problem, but being a solution. Again, really fits with me in terms of resonating how I approach this as well. And then a really key sentence here, he says, is page 67, when the client no longer needs the protection of the current problem, the change occurs naturally. And I love this because it means that we don't have to work so hard at memory reconsolidation, because once you have started to work with the memory using this pattern, it kind of works itself out. So he talks about the use of motivational interviewing. I'm of 2 frames on this one, but I can see how it works for him in eliciting the problem and finding out how it affects them. So standard questions in motivational interviewing are, how does the problem serve you? He talks about this being the benefit of the status quo. How does it cost you? So what is the cost of the status quo? What would this change cost you? And what are the benefits of the change? So I don't necessarily go through it in such a defined way, but in a lot of the therapies, we talk about, well, how would your life be different? What would be better if you were able to shift this belief, shift this behavior, shift this nervous system response? So I definitely prime the betterment, but I don't necessarily talk about the costs as explicitly because they come in knowing the costs. So something we definitely can get into. He talks about injunctions. So this isn't something I've ever tried before. On page 83, Golding injunctions beginning with the word don't. So this is the ways that children can adapt beliefs that become foundational for them based on these early experiences. So don't exist, don't do anything, don't be a child, don't grow up, don't be you, don't feel, don't think. A lot of these don'ts can create repetitive patterns and repetitive thoughts as adults. Don't belong, don't be important, don't be well. So these are not necessarily decisions that you make on a daily basis, but they're made for you while you were a kid, and it just becomes a part of the way that you see yourself and you see your relationship with the world. So these are kind of identifying the issue and priming them for the opposite response by talking about the cost and the improvement of shifting these beliefs. So the implementation of that change happens in the 1, 2, 3 steps. So the implementation steps are reactivating the target learning, just noticing this foundational belief, activating a mismatch, and repeating until it's extinguished. So what you're doing is you're giving them an opposite or neutral experience of that initial target learning. So the learning can be somatic, or what did your body learn about what's safe and what's dangerous, and the learning can be belief systems. So when I think about the different kinds of trauma therapy that I do, accelerated resolution therapy absolutely does that. We watch a movie the first time, reactivates the target, and then we create a mismatch or a totally different movie, and then we repeat that new movie until the original one is extinguished. So literally ART maps perfectly to what he's describing. So the repetition is updating the brain pathways. These can be imaginal, these can be conversational. If you're doing family-based or couple-based therapy, emotionally focused therapy, for example, would use the actual relationship as a catalyst for these new experiences. So that is the different stages that he talks about. And then he talks about different protocols that he uses in his psychotherapy practice, including the ideal parent figure protocol to imagine a different family of ideal parents. I studied this with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk doing psychodrama, where he actually had people enact the ideal parent role for somebody who'd been suffering childhood issues. He talks about the rewind technique, where you are watching a TV sequence, rewind it to a safe place, and then change the scene at different speeds, move forwards and backwards until you can get a sense of safety. So there's lots of different kinds of therapies that use a movie technique. I did it with tapping or emotional freedom techniques. But what we're basically trying to do is to change the old programming into something new by replacing the emotions, physical sensations, and even beliefs that happen at the time of the memory. So other things that I thought were really interesting at the end is he talked about how to list the opposites. So keep working on creating a list of opposite feelings compared to the ones that they had, and keep priming them towards these new opposite emotions. And he talks a lot about allies and superpowers. I really like that playful nature of the new imagined experiences. I think that play really activates a calmer nervous system, which helps that the memory change. He also talks about questions to notice that V stage, or did this work? How would you notice? What would it look like? And how you can confirm that these changes have taken place. Page 224, he talks a lot about verification and how you're noticing nervous system and behavioral changes that are now permanent.